Welcome to Girl Dad, the podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Anderson, and I'm thrilled to bring you honest conversations with dads and daughters, sharing heartfelt stories, actionable advice, and real daughter perspectives that will help you be the best girl dad you can be. Hey, and welcome back to Girl Dad, the podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Anderson, and today we are doing part 3 of a deep dive on the anxious generation. So this episode is building off of the last 2 solo episodes, and it will be the finale to the anxious generation solo series that I've been doing. If you haven't seen the other 2 episodes, I would recommend going back and listening to them first. It is not fully necessary, but it will help provide a lot of context and great information. And for those of you who have listened to the previous 2 episodes, I want to provide a quick recap. So, episode 1 was really just introducing the topic of the book, The Anxious Generation, and how a phone based world is affecting children, especially as it relates to anxiety, depression, and isolation. And the second episode was all about why girls are more affected than boys, since this is, a podcast for dads with daughters. And hopefully, that helped you understand the daughter world a little bit more. There was solutions provided in that episode as well, but this episode will actually sum everything up and it's all about solutions. So this is all coming from what Jonathan Haidt, the author, recommends for parents on how to set their kids up for success and help reform the landscape so that children are less prone to these kinds of things like anxiety and depression and isolation. And really, my goal for this episode and really this series in general is to help support you in raising healthy, confident, and happy daughters in this kind of modern phone based world. If you are listening to episode 3 after listening to the first 2 solo episodes, I do want to thank you for being here and just let you know that the fact that you're listening to this breakdown of a wonderful book says so much about you. And I know you're the kind of dad who wants to get this right and you really care about her future. So I want to say thank you from your daughter and from me. Before we dive into the 4 reforms that Jonathan Haidt recommends in his book, I did want to talk about what parents are experiencing collectively. And this is shown both through research and just anecdotal conversations. But I think this is common across a lot of parents. So I'm sure you feel this way as well. But I guess one point is you're not alone in this. And I think this is something that's going to be evolving and changing as more and more research comes out, as more awareness is brought to this kind of topic as a whole. And we're kind of at that beginning stage where we're just finding out what's really going down and how it's affecting children. And parents want to do something about it, but it has been unclear in the past as to what action to take because everyone is just going through this for the first time. So just the way that, the kids are going through this anxiety and depression and kind of the aftermath of the smartphone for the first time, the parents are also going through how do we navigate this changing world? How do we navigate being connected with our children and letting them be connected with their friends? But this is a new landscape that we didn't grow up with. And I think there's just a lot of confusion as to what actions to take. And I think what I'm trying to say here is just that you're not alone. And depending on how old your daughter is or your daughters are, there's different things that you can do to help support her or to help prevent some of these issues from happening. And time again, I hear the hardest part from a parent's perspective is that, your child comes to you and says, I'm the only one who doesn't have a smartphone, or I'm the only one who doesn't have Snapchat or Instagram or TikTok. And there's this real sense of FOMO, fear of missing out from your kids. And that's really hard because as a parent, you want to make them happy and you want them to feel connected with their friends, but you also see these dangers and there's just this real challenge that you are facing. And I think that's what parents are really struggling with right now. So if you resonate with that and that relates to you, you're definitely not alone. But again, I'm really hoping that some of these solutions speak to you. And the one thing that I keep hearing that is super interesting We've talked about it on this podcast as well. If you haven't listened to Ken Kang's episode, he's a therapist and he talks about it in great detail as well. But we can come together as parents, or I guess in my case, like future the distant parents, but we can create boundaries and rules around technology that we agree upon together. And that prevents this kind of issue that children are experiencing and parents are experiencing, where all of the other kids have this and I don't have that. If you connect with other parents and you kind of agree, okay, we're not going to do this until 16, or we're not going to do this until 18, or whatever those kinds of collective boundaries are, it makes it a lot easier for the children and for you because you're all on the same page. And it's not like, oh, the rest of the friends have these things and I don't. So I love the idea of having those kinds of conversations with other parents. If you are at an age, or your children are at an age where they haven't really entered into this world yet and you're just trying to figure out how to navigate it, I think that is one of the most impactful things that you can do, because it really is a collective problem and it's going to need collective action to be taken care of. Okay, now we'll get into 4 reforms that Jonathan Haidt recommends, and then 5 kind of quick actions or solutions to keep in mind with your daughter. And again, this is kind of dependent on how old your daughter is. For example, if she's already in college, then, some of these things might not apply to you anymore. But my hope is that you can still resonate with these and pass this information along. Or you have a younger daughter who is entering this era or will enter this era in the future, and you can keep these in mind before she gets her first smartphone or before she gets into high school. I think there's a lot of great information here, and it's ultimately up to you as the parent how you want to navigate this challenging landscape. But I figured I'll give you all the tools and all the tips that he recommends, and then you can kind of take it from there and make your own decisions. But I really like some of these, especially the actions and kind of daily solutions that are recommended. So let's get into it. So the first reform is no smartphones before high school. And this is definitely a challenge because a lot of children look to other, students and see them with their smartphones. But again, going back to that first thing that we talked about, if they have their core friend group who is aligned on this same kind of page, then it'll be a lot easier to enforce this. And again, this is specifically smartphones. So they can still have a phone that, you can text, call, do all the things that you need to do to communicate with people. And as long as it's not a smartphone, it doesn't interfere as much with a lot of that brain development that is so key during these years. So, for example, I think, like a flip phone first, and then an NV2 is what I remember, which you kind of like slide up and then you have the full keyboard, which was convenient instead of having to push the buttons 3 times to get to the right character. But either way, it was a way to connect with other people. And I think that's what, social media and smartphones are supposed to do. They're supposed to help with connection. But what we're seeing based on the data is that it's actually isolating and depressing. And it is not doing the thing that it says it's going to do or the thing that it is supposed to do. So for all your daughters who are desiring this connection to their friends and to others, a normal phone does that quite well. Number 2 is no social media before 16. And of course, this is another one where you're going to really want to rely on that collective parenting, because if all of your daughter's friends have social media, it's really hard for her, and she is going to come to you and want that as well. And so the more that you can come to an agreement with other parents on this and point to the book as evidence as to why, he really talks about waiting as long as possible because there's so many benefits after each year. But if you can wait till 16, there's a great amount of brain development that happens in that period, and that at least protects her a little bit more. I've heard that this one is one that gets the most pushback because daughters, again, really want to feel connected. They don't want to miss out. And if all of their friends have social media and they don't, they feel like they're, not getting invited to things. And that might be the case. Um, and it can be really isolating in its own way. But some of these social media platforms, with the way that the algorithms are designed, they are setting your daughter up for failure in a lot of ways. And so I think that there's a few ways to go about this. And the first one is having real conversations about this. Like, ask your daughter, why she wants to have social media. Let her be really heard. Don't immediately just say no and because I said so. I think that's probably the worst thing to do here. Explain your why. Talk to her about some of the fears that you have. Talk to her about the research that you're seeing and how these platforms are designed to do certain things that actually may hurt her. And I think when it comes to younger generations, that those are the kind of more powerful ways to influence in like a nice way, is really educating, because nobody likes to feel taken advantage of. And I think when you give the power to them by informing them and talking to your daughters about really what's going on these kind of apps and how it's important that she is healthy and happy and how you want the best for her, then she kind of starts to understand your position more. But if you just say, no, you're not allowed to have that because those are the rules, because I said so, that can be really, really frustrating for a daughter. And with this girl who's, she's the oldest she's ever been, right? Like, you have to give her some grace there. She feels a lot more mature and responsible because she's the most mature and responsible she's ever been. When she's 28 and she's looking back, she realizes, oh, she was so young. But at the time, that's not what she's thinking. Even though you see it, she doesn't see it that way. And so I think it's really important to have genuine conversations and be open to hearing her perspective and be open to listening and validating her and making her feel important and heard, because she doesn't want to be shut down by you and shut down by everyone else because she doesn't have this thing that other people do. So, yeah, again, it's up to you when you want to allow her to get on social media. This is just what the book recommends in terms of a distinct age where it is less dangerous for the girls. And yeah, I think having real conversations is the best way to go about this. Okay, reform number 3 is phone-free schools. And this is one that's not really fully in your control, but it is something that you can speak up about and you can talk to other parents about and really get the conversation going around having phone-free schools. And he recommends this in the book a lot and wants to, I think, inspire others to take action on this specific subject, because there's just a lot of research around how when children have smartphones in school, or I guess phones in general, they're extremely distracted. They're not paying attention. It's difficult for the teachers. It's difficult for the students. And if they can just remove that distraction, so I think there's, different lockers that can lock them up, or you just have to turn your phone off during class, or whatever the precautions are and the rules around it are. The main thing here is there's a lot of benefits when kids aren't just on their phone all day during school, which, like, my mom's a 3rd grade teacher and she's been talking about this, not necessarily phone-free schools, just how challenging it is for children to pay attention. So this is something worth talking about, even if it's not something that, one person has control over. And then the 4th reform, the last one that he talks about, is more unsupervised play and real world independence. And his overarching theme around this is that children are anti-fragile. So he talks about how resilience in children is built through real experience. So things like boredom or conflict or failure or risk, you have to go through these. And he said that a lot of parents these days are actually, overprotective in the real world and then underprotective online. And so he wants to switch that. So, let your kids develop social skills and overcome anxiety in the real world so that when they are online, they have more of a force field and they're more protected. And, that might look like letting your daughter walk to her friend's house, or letting her resolve an argument without you having to step in, or kind of asking her questions that make her the one in control. Like, what do you want to do in this given situation? Like, how would you handle this? Or, um, you know, not giving her the direction always, letting her kind of take charge. The other thing is, letting her be bored. So if you're on a car ride and you're driving, make it a phone-free time, make it a screen-free time, make it a screen-free time, and make it a time where she's really bored and just present, and let her feel that feeling, because boredom is important. A lot of great ideas come from boredom. A lot of self-reflection comes in boredom. And if you're never allowed to feel boredom, then you're constantly looking for the next stimulation. And that is one of the problems that social media kind of solves for people. So if you don't feel comfortable being bored, then you will always look to your phone to scroll. You will always look for something to take your attention away. And that is what's causing a lot of that, I think, anxiety and the rewiring of our brains to be triggered in such a different way, because we don't even understand what it is like to be bored, and it's extremely uncomfortable if you've never felt those feelings before. So those are the 4 reforms that Jonathan Haidt talks about in his book. But I think one of the most important things to note here, especially this being Girl Dad, the podcast, is relationships are everything. And your relationship with your daughter is extremely important in this whole picture of the anxious generation and how to best support your daughter. And this is for a few reasons. So number one, rules without relationship just create resentment. So if you don't have a close relationship with your daughter and your daughter doesn't feel the love that you have for her, which I know if you're listening to this podcast, you have a lot of love for your daughter. If your daughter doesn't feel that and know that and doesn't have a connection to you, then these rules are going to lead to resentment. But if she can understand that you are coming from a place of love and support and protection and providing for her and her future, then these rules can be understood a little bit better. She might not like the rules, but at least she'll understand where you're coming from. And I think that's a really key point. Additionally, your relationship with your daughter helps protect her from all the things that we've talked about in these past 3 episodes. So anxiety, depression, isolation, you can play a major role in helping prevent that by simply showing up for her the way she needs. And if you think about it, a lot of times your daughter is looking for connection when she's looking for social media and a smartphone. She's looking to connect with her friends. She's looking to connect with her peers. Daughters need connection. It is a women core need. So all the girls in your life need connection. Sisters, wives, daughters, we all need it. And you can help provide some of that so she doesn't, feel the need so heavily elsewhere. And some of the ways you do that is by making sure that she knows that you actually see her. You understand her, you love her. When she's struggling, is she thinking of coming to you? How can you help her in those kinds of times? Do you have time together carved out that does not have anything to do with her phone, more real world experiences? And more that you can connect with her and develop your relationship with your daughter, you are helping protect her from the negative effects of social media and the digital world. To wrap up this episode, there are 5 quick actions or solutions to navigate this landscape with your daughter. So number 1 is to have a family tech conversation. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but really just opening the door for a conversation around social media, how your daughter thinks about it, what the experiences are like. If she has social media, talk to her about it. If she doesn't have social media, but she's, getting to that age where other people are, ask her about the conversations around social media, how people are using it. Just be really curious and don't go into it with an agenda of like, this is what I'm going to say at the end, like she cannot do this, or here are the rules now. It's more just an understanding. And, let it be a family conversation. You could say you listened to a podcast and this was really an interesting topic and you want to learn more from her perspective. Like those are really, really welcomed conversations as long as they stay at that kind of curious, open-ended level. And then you think about it more before coming in with any solutions or actions. Like this should just be more so for your understanding and getting your daughter's perspective a little bit stronger. Action number 2 is to find your people. And we've been talking about this throughout this episode and others, but I thought mentioning it earlier was impactful because it kind of feeds into a lot of the reforms that are recommended. But just making sure that you talk to the parents of your kids' friends and align on different things and have open conversations around it. I'm sure they are struggling the same way to navigate this landscape and figure out how to take action as parents and how to protect kids, but also, allow them to have that core need fulfilled of connection. And I feel for you parents. I am not looking forward to navigating this. And I'm sure it's going to look entirely different when my future children are at this age. So this is an ever-changing landscape, and every parent is relying on the best information that they have at that time. But I think the collective parenting model is a great place to start. So to summarize that, just find your people, talk to them, align on things, and make some boundaries and have great conversations together. Number 3 is to create at least one sacred phone-free space at home. So, the dinner table and the car are 2 common ones that I hear from others and that I love because, eating dinner together or breakfast, very important connection opportunities. And if there are phones present, as we've kind of talked about, that can put a wall up in terms of connection. And that's the whole point of this. So find the time where it's phone free for everyone and really allow that connection to happen naturally without technology getting in the way. Number 4 is planning something real. And when we talk about real, it's just related to not digital. So we're talking in person, a real world experience per se. So things like hiking or cooking or driving with music, blasting and singing together, taking her out on a date one-on-one and really just paying attention to her. All of those real moments of connection in person help her develop connection to you first and foremost, and to the family. But also, she will crave those moments more than the digital moments. If her life is filled with really fun experiences and really deep connection, then social media is not as important. It's still going to be enticing when everyone else has it and she, is searching for her own independence. But you are setting her up for success by providing her with a lot of real life experiences. And I've never been mid-sport or mid-conversation with my friends, having a great time, and thought to myself, dang, I really wish I had social media right now. It's those moments where you're bored at home that you tend to pull for those kinds of things. So the more moments that she has playing sports, hanging out with friends, having real experiences with you, cooking together, the less that she will think about social media and other phone or device related activities. The last action or solution is to talk to your daughter about why you're proud of her. And this is related to this broader conversation of technology because as she gets into the ages where social media becomes really popular, she starts to compare herself a lot to others. And having a deep understanding and trust in herself is so important. And you can help provide that by really praising some of the ways that she takes action or that she shows up for the family or for herself or for others. So things like, I noticed the way that you handled that situation and I thought it showed a lot of courage and I'm really proud of you. Or, I'm really proud of the way that you have been working so hard on XYZ. I see your hard work and I appreciate you and I'm so proud of you. Those kinds of words do so much more for her than an algorithm can ever do for her. And in these really important developmental years, the more that you can give her these good words of encouragement and of love and of trust and understanding, the more she understands herself and she feels good going into the world, whether it's the real world or the digital world, she feels like she knows herself. So dads helping build daughter's sense of self-worth is so valuable, especially during this time. And it helps counteract some of these negative effects of social media and smartphones, and really a lot of the things that we've talked about in these past 3 episodes. The book ends with Jonathan Haidt saying, "Let's bring our children home." And I thought that was a really powerful message because home is more than a place, it's a relationship. And I would like to end this episode with inspiring you to be that relationship that she comes home to. Be her home, help create her home, help her feel safe and loved in the home, and know that regardless of your daughter's reactions and comments around this, because it is a very challenging situation to navigate, I want you to know that what you're doing is really important and you are doing a great job as a father. Thank you for spending the last 3 solo episodes with me on the podcast. If it did help you, please share it with another dad who you think this would be interesting for. And in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for tuning into Girl Dad, the podcast. If you found today's conversation helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow girl dad. I read every review and truly take your words to heart. To close out, remember, your intentional moments make lasting legacies. See you next week.